All right, juniors, we're the Spanish. Your book, I'm glad we have a book that explains things well and simply because you're going to be much more on your own, not completely. I will be available if you have questions or problems. You know that you may ask on My School Works. I will be available Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. if you have problems. But if you study these pages carefully, do these exercises, you should be able to understand this. First of all, on page 398, you are to translate this lecture in order to be saved. And this is using what we have just learned with your prepositions plus the infinitives, such as antes de, creer, before believing, después de creer, after believing. So you're using the things we've just learned in this previous chapter. Translate that into English. You will be turning that in, and I will be grading it. Now, on page, if you will open up your textbook, we are going to be learning something new, and I so regret that we're not in class together to learn this. Up until now, we have only been able to read and write and say things in the present tense in Spanish. Now, we are going to learn to say things in the past tense. So, we know that in the present tense, we can say the artist paints the picture. El artista pinta la pintura. You know that your verb ends in A, the ending for él, ella, usted, any singular subject. That is present tense. Now, to make a statement in the past tense, we do the same thing. It's the same word order, but the ending of the verb changes. Instead of the ending A, the artist, el artista pinta, you're going to have the ending stressed O. Now you may think, oh no, O is the ending for the yo form, I. And in the present tense it is. But notice the O in the present tense for yo does not have a written accent mark. So this is a case when you conjugate these verbs, if you do not put that accent mark for the past tense, it would be wrong. Because el artista pintó la pintura. The artist painted, past tense, the picture. If you left off that accent mark, pinto would mean I am painting. I paint. Notice that the unstressed A of pinta becomes a stressed O, pinto. The stressed O is a sign of the past tense in Spanish, just as the ED is a sign of the past tense in English. So it is extremely important that you remember to accent the O. Yo presento, I present. Él presentó, he presented. To make a statement negative, we know that we place no directly before the verb, whether it is present tense or past tense. You place no before the verb to make a statement negative. Now, a question. We have learned there are 3 ways to ask a question in Spanish. We may do it with just our voice, rising intonation. El artista pintó la pintura. Or we can make a statement and add, right? ¿Verdad? El artista pintó la pintura. ¿Verdad? Or the third way is the way we always use. Remember, in a question, we put the verb before the subject in Spanish. Pintó el artista la pintura? And this is what we will do. Remember, if we say, did the artist paint the picture? Do we translate that helping verb did? No, we do not. Just as we did not translate the helping verb do in the present tense. Yo presento. I do present. You could say, I am presenting. I present. In the past tense, el artista presentó. He, the artist, did present. We do not translate that did. We only conjugate the verb presentar. Now, please study that. You are learning one ending for the past tense, the accented O. That is the ending for the el, ella, and usted forms. And I have given you your assignment on 406. You have it on your sheet. That is what you're to do. Now, on page 407, we are going to learn the endings for regular AR verbs in the past tense. We have already learned the accented O is the ending for el, ella, and usted, or any singular subject. In this chapter, on page 407, you will learn the other endings for the other subjects. In Spanish, the personal endings of the past tense are more complex than in English. In English, we just say, he presented, I presented, you presented, they presented. It's all the same. But in Spanish, as you've already learned, each subject has its own ending, verb ending. In all, there are 6 personal endings. We will learn them in this chapter. Now, on page 408, the yo form. In the past tense, it's not the O as we have been used to in the present tense. It is an accented E. Now, you remember, that E is pronounced how? It's pronounced like a long A. Yo presenté. Yo confesé. You must put the accent mark. In changing the verb from the infinitive to the yo form, notice the accented E is not added to the AR ending, but it rather replaces it. And this is the same thing we've learned in conjugating our verbs in the present tense. We will get rid of the AR ending and replace it with the verb ending. For the yo form, we will replace it with the accented E. To present, presentar. But I presented, yo presenté, yo confesé. The stem of the verb does not change. Now, in the present tense, we learned some irregular stem changing verbs. E to I, and E to IE, and O and U to UE. These verbs do not stem change in the past tense. We must remember that. So, I confess, yo confieso. But in the past tense, it does not stem change. It's yo confesé. Please remember that. So, you need to practice on your own. Do these out loud, these endings. Now, the personal you, to form. Remember, in the present tense, it was AS. But in the past tense, it's going to be ASTE. Now, aste. You do not have a written accent mark. So, presentar would be tu presentaste, tu confesaste, and nosotros, the we. In the present tense, remember it is AMOS. Nosotros presentamos. We present. Nosotros confesamos. We confess. But in the past tense, it's the same thing. The nosotros ending for AR verbs is exactly the same for the present tense and past tense. You say, well, how would we know which it is? You can tell from the context of the sentence. We present the lesson now. Presentamos la lección ahora. Present tense. We presented the lesson yesterday. Nosotros presentamos la lección ayer. Past tense. It is the same. Now, él, ella, and usted, we've already learned. It's the stressed O. A person. The teacher presented. El profesor presentó. A place. California presented. California presentó. A thing. The book presented. El libro presentó. Now, when asking a question, if you use an interrogative word, who or what, you would use the stressed O ending. For any singular subject, you use that ending. So please learn these endings. Now, we have one more, the plural ending. Ellos, ellas, or ustedes. They or you all. This ending is A-R-O-N, pronounced aron. They presented. Ellos presentaron. They confessed. Ellos confesaron. The stress remains on the ending, but you do not have a written accent mark. So this plural ending would be the same, aron, for any plural subject. The teachers presentaron things. The books presented. Los libros presentaron. Who all presented. Quienes presentaron. Now, at the bottom of 410, you have these endings for your past tense. They're neatly in a little box for you for each subject. You absolutely must memorize those. Where an accent is needed in the yo form and in the el, ella, usted form, those two, make sure you write the accent mark. Now, on page 411, the past tense may be translated. I prepared. It may be translated past emphatic. I did prepare. But you cannot translate it. I was preparing. That past progressive. You do not use this past tense. Later you will learn another past tense that is used for this past progressive. But we will not be learning that tense this year. You will be glad to know. So, memorize those. On page 413, you have your assignment on the sheet that I gave you to do those two exercises. Now, what are you going to do for verses and vocabulary? Yes, I am still going to give you a grade. I'll give you a grade whether or not you do the work. If you do not do the work, then you will get a bad grade. If you do the work, then yes, you will get an A if you do the work neatly and perfectly. So, that is very important. You are to learn your new verse, and you are to, after you've learned it, and I have no way of knowing if you will actually do that, You are to write the verse in English and in Spanish 10 times. That means you're going to write it in English and in Spanish once. You're going to write it in English and in Spanish twice. In English and in Spanish 3 times. You're to write it 10 times in English and in Spanish. At least I will know that you are somewhat familiar with the verse. Make sure it is punctuated correctly. That is something you usually do not do on your verse quizzes. And spelled correctly. Now, your vocabulary. You also will receive a grade. You are to learn your vocabulary words. You are to write each word in English and in Spanish 10 times. You're going to say, well, that is a great deal of writing. Well, I must do something to know that you've at least spent a little bit of time on each word. Instead of a quiz, this is what you will be doing. So, and even accent marks, I will notice. So, you are to write each word in English and Spanish 10 times. Number 2, English and in Spanish 10 times for each word. And that is what you will be turning in. I will be grading it. That will be your vocabulary quiz grade. I hope you understand. If you have questions, you know that you may ask on My School Works anytime, Monday through Friday from 10 to 2. I will be available if you have questions or trouble in any of these assignments. Work carefully. Learn this material. You must have it for this year and for next year.